Hello, everybody. This is the Chocolate News Podcast. I'm your co-host, John Alexander Reese.
And I'm your co-host, Andria Carter.
And if you did not know, the Cincinnati Herald has been around since 1955 and is the leading African American owned newspaper in the greater Cincinnati area and northern Kentucky area. How's it going, Andrea?
It's going great, John. I have to dig out my sweaters now. I'm forced to do it now. That little bit of taste of cold weather at the beginning of the week caught me off guard like everybody else. And I was like, oh no, I actually have to put my winter coat on. And it was so funny. My sister, who lives in Florida, called me up complaining because it was freezing down there and it was like 57 degrees. It's like, Maria, it's 23 here. It's she's like, no, you don't understand. I had to turn the heat on. Well, for in Florida, they don't normally turn the heat on. But when they
Yeah.
turn the heat on, they first have to burn off the dust on the coils
Uh,
before it actually works. And she set her fire alarm off.
that's funny.
So that was the amusing part of the week. So, but I digress.
Yeah. Andrea, what's some of the chocolate news of the week?
Some of the chocolate news that I'm going to start off with a sad note. Actually, Rosalynn Carter died, and she was laid to rest. And she was always the sidekick, Jimmy Carter's sidekick, so to speak, in terms of whatever they did. I think she leaves behind a legacy of advocacy, working on behalf of the people with a nice Southern accent and everything. And I think that she um, really was the modern first lady. A lot of people really got after Hillary Clinton, but it was Rosalynn who was the first one to sit in on meetings with Jimmy and offer advice and do some work and change the first lady from just being the hostess in the White House to actually a working position with policies and advocating and speaking to people. She changed what it meant to be a first lady. And I think we have a lot to thank for that, because we wouldn't have been able to enjoy all the other first ladies who've had, different initiatives to spark the country, like George Bush's wife, who had reading, and Obama's wife, Michelle, who believed in getting people to eat right. And George Bush's father, his wife, his mother, she was an advocate on behalf of people. I forgot what her issue was, but I know it was about people doing better. I think it was either reading, pets, and something else. So Rosalynn Carter was the one who sparked the initiatives for the first ladies and be able to figure out a way to promote them, get people to support them, and just have them continue on after they leave, which I think was her lasting legacy. So that was it. And then unfortunately, I have to say that another known figure throughout the world, Henry Kissinger, died yesterday. He was 100 years old, and he was such a presence in the diplomatic world. Not only he helped shape the policy and the global policy for the United States, he helped shape the nation's Cold War history. He helped negotiate the end of the Vietnam era. He helped open doors to China, helped ease relationships with Russia at that time and the Middle East. I think he served under Nixon as the national security advisor. Then when Nixon resigned, he stayed and served under Ford, and Ford asked him to become Secretary of State. He worked as Secretary of State. But think about the fact that he also serves as an advisor to a number of presidents, over 12 presidents, in fact, more than a quarter of those who've held the office, from John Kennedy to Joe Biden. It's just unbelievable how much of an influence and viewpoint that he gave, advising presidents on diplomatic policies and how the world and the world view. I think it's a shame that we've lost someone of his stature, because he was our I would say, diplomatic sound of reason that we have been missing for a time before Joe Biden got back into office, and we got some stabilization going on. So he's going to be sad. He's going to be missed a lot for what he did, but also for what he could see and do and advise. It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
I would also say disappointing was the Bengals against the Steelers.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we didn't like the outcome. I would say starting out, it looked like they were having a good show, the Bengals, and then it went to hell.
Yeah, I
That's
think that's
that
accurate.
that's all I can say. We had the 5-6 season. We are last in the AFC North right now. I don't know, it could be turned around a little bit maybe, but at this point, it's from your lips to God's ears on a wonderful season. We've lost our quarterback, Joe Burrows. We have John. Is it John Browning?
No, I think it's
Jake. I'm sorry, Jake Browning.
yeah, Jake Browning. Yeah.
Too many. You know what? Too many. I've been doing too many J's today. Jake Browning. You know what? He has the stuff to be a good quarterback. I think
I don't know.
he if you compare both of them, if you compare Joe Burrows to Jake Browning, too many J's, look at laser focus. When you see Burrow throwing that ball, he's strategic. He is quick on his feet where he's throwing or maneuvering, things like that. Browning, he moves, but he seems to hesitate. He doesn't seem to have the laser focus. He was very nervous. Not trying to give him an excuse, but I'm sorry, but it was the Steelers. And
Yeah.
and the Steelers have not had a great season either. But they devastated our offense. And the defense was there, but the offense was like, it was like a hiccup. I don't know what it was. It did something. So all we can hope is that they recover, get their minds straight, and pull off something in Florida on Monday. That's
Yeah,
all I got.
let's hope so. All I gotta say is that maybe get AJ McCarron in there. Maybe. I don't know.
I think so. I think Brownie needs to find. You know how Burrow and Mixon have that rhythm, and then Burrow with Chase. There are certain rhythms that go on in when you're being strategic, and you see that with Burrows. Browning, I think the fact that he has not been used enough to get that rhythm, to get that, dude, I'm gonna go for you. Or, that bro code on the field. You're with me. Let's do this. I don't see that leadership. I don't see that strategic, that strike, like, I'm the point of the arrow, you all come with me and we're gonna do this. I don't see that sharpness with him. Now, maybe he was just, down and out and a little nervous, but he needs to reach down deep within and find his inner leadership quality and put it on the field.
Yep.
Because on Sunday, it was not there. It was, oh my God, I better do well. Otherwise, I'm not going to get my lunch money.
Yeah.
So I don't think people would appreciate the comment I just made, but anyway, but it is what it is. So another chocolate news note is the fatal explosion that occurred in Hillsborough, Kentucky, and a business, I believe it was an auto shop, blew up.
Yeah.
And 3 people are dead from that explosion. I still had not heard exactly what caused the explosion. Number one, it was an auto repair shop, so they have torches and gas and propane or whatever, and they have all sorts of stuff to help keep our cars running. And it was kind of sad that it occurred and 3 people have died. I hope we find out what happened, and it will, they can hopefully this not happen again. But I would say I ask everyone to pray for the souls that we lost, and pray for the people who were affected and traumatized by the explosion, because it happened out of the blue, and it can be terrifying when it does occur. You never expect it to happen until it does.
Right.
Then the judge, Aretha Franklin's property has finally been awarded to her heirs. Her sons got her property. It's taken a long time, but the outcome has been awarded. There was a difference between two different wills, one handwritten and another one that was discovered. And but it's been resolved now, and they can move on. And I'm very happy to hear that, because she was a wonderful woman, and her children should not be fighting over her legacy or property. Last but not least, this I find encouraging.
Yeah.
Black people are living longer.
Oh, thank goodness.
I mean, normally you hear that women live longer than men, but then Black people don't live as long as women living longer than men. But according to the latest report released from the National Center of Health Statistics, there is an upswing for African American population in 2022. The NCHS has highlighted the positive strides in health outcomes, particularly for Black Americans. A lot of us are doing more to eat healthy, do right, not let any of our medical conditions affect how we live, but be upbeat and more positive. And according to the report, we are life expectancy at birth for the entire US population increased, reaching 77.5 years in 2022. That's a significant rise of 1.1 years, because we were trending down. Now we're trending back up. That's good. And actually, it's happening in both genders. There's an increase of an additional year, 1.3 years. So men normally, on average, can last to 75 years. Females seeing a rise in their years, not just a year, but 0.9 years. So basically, on average, women last, survive past 80 or to 80, which I think is interesting. Though, Henry Kissinger lasted until 100.
He sure did.
And I have a friend of my father's whose mother is 102. And I have another friend whose father is, his longevity, he's at 101. So we're living longer. I think because we're trying to do better, eat better, even though everybody does love their soul food. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
But I think also we're eating it in a more healthier environment, so to speak. And we're getting better medical care, even though there's still some issues within the medical community regarding Black people, or people of color, I should say. But everything is improving. Everyone is taking better care of themselves. I mean, I need to get back on my walking care, because, the more that we do to stay healthy, the longer we live. And I think the African Americans are doing that. And I think that this report reflected on this, even despite there's been some adverse effects of COVID-19, but overall, everyone is healthier. And I think that is fantastic for everybody.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Well, that's all the chocolate news I got for today.
All right. Thanks, Andrea. And now we move on to our special guests. Today we have Candra Reeves and Nia Thomas with the Center for Social Justice, and they will be talking about the Use of Force project. How you doing today, ladies?
Pretty good. Thank you for having us.
Yes, doing great. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so can you tell us what this project is about?
Sure, I'll jump in here. In 2022, we applied for a grant that the Urban Institute and Microsoft put out last year, and we applied thinking that it would be a great use of funds to work with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office to collect their use of force data and just kind of see what use of force looks like in the county. And so we got the grant early fall, and we spent basically September until the end of the year last year hand collecting their use of force records that they have currently, or back then it was on all paper records. So we would work with the sheriff's office and we work with their professional standards division, which is in charge of all of the use of force investigations, to collect that data. And then we ran a quick analysis and threw it into a report. And the great thing about this report is it's easy to read. It's pretty simple to follow and see like what types of use of force cases are occurring through the sheriff's office. And yeah, we just wanted to add another layer of accountability and also just transparency when it comes to police data, because a lot of times community feels like it's been hidden or it's a secret. And so putting this report together just allows for more transparency and more community involvement of knowing like what use of force looks like, how the sheriff's office investigates, and stuff like that.
I have to say that, I went through the report, and what I found fascinating were the graphics depicting what type of use of force, but also where it jumped and where it didn't jump, on what types of use of force there were. And it was like, I don't know what CEW was.
CEW?
Yeah, there's like
Oh, yes. So the CEW is the conducted energy weapon. So basically it's the tasers.
Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a very fancy name for taser, but okay.
Taser is it's technically a brand, like think Kleenex to tissue.
Oh, okay. But I guess what I find interesting is that very little use of the taser, very little use of the canine. It starts to tick up with the chemical irritant, but the physical force, oh my God, it just jumped. And then the non-injury force was jumping a little bit, but I mean, it's I found that dramatic. And then the graphic in all the 5 districts where it was used, I thought that was very interesting as well, of how it was used. I mean, what was the reaction of the sheriff's department when you completed the report and presented it to them?
I would say that overall the reactions were really positive. It's important to remember that for this report to work in the way that it did, this was a collaboration between our two organizations. I can let Candra speak a little bit more to some of how that's affected their policy recommendations and their intentions for the future. But I think it's also important to the point about the actual graphs and how they look. I think the number of cases is also important to consider as well. I think coming into this project, a lot of us anticipated a much larger number of cases, which for that entire span of time, we only had 100 cases, so the spikes kind of make you feel like there's these huge jumps, but reality is that there really wasn't as many incidents or reports of force as you might expect for a department of this size.
People, when you think of use of force, you think of white police officers beating on black people. And I would say, I'm not trying to stereotype or anything like that, but did you find a lot of where it was across all spectrums of where use of force was used, or was there an uneven amount used on one demographic for another?
Sure. So District 1, which is the area where is the sheriff's office headquarters, but it also includes the village of Lincoln Heights, as well as Cleves. And so, as we know, Lincoln Heights is a primarily African-American area. And so with those being in that District 1, we did see a higher number of Black males being the targets or the recipients of force cases there. And that was disproportionate given the, the population of Black people in Hamilton County. I can't think of on the top of my head, but I think it's like 30 to 40%. Nia, if you can jump in here and help me with that. But it's
What was the figure we were looking for again?
The Black population in Hamilton County. I believe it was 30 to 40%. Nia will, fill in that detail if I am incorrect. And then like the white population for the county is like around 60%. Again, these numbers, I'm not looking at the report in front of me, but
Okay.
given that given that the Black population for Hamilton County is fairly low, the percentage of Black folks that were the recipients of force between 2020 and 2022 were relatively high. And I will say that because this data, I just want to put a caveat there, because this data only included 100 cases, we can't necessarily generalize because it wasn't enough cases to run a really full and robust statistical analysis here. And so because we couldn't do that, we can't generalize on this data. All we can speak to is these are the cases that happened between 2020 and 2022. And this is what it looks like. But to say that this is what all of Hamilton County looked like, I can't do that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's not trying. That's the reason why I asked my question the way I did.
Yeah.
Because I know the sheriff has been trying to destigmatize some thoughts about the sheriff's office and bring them into the 21st century, but also update and modernize the attitude that the sheriff officers have toward the community.
Mm-hmm. And I think she's done a really good job with that, actually. And so when we think about the numbers, we see them decreasing by year. So 2020 was the highest, then 2021, then 2020. Like it keeps going down each year. And we have to remember that in 2020, the current sheriff, Sheriff McGuffey, was not in the seat as sheriff. She started in 2021. And so I think just seeing the things that she's been able to do over these last couple of years, including completely updating their system. So like I talked about earlier, we were in there collecting all of the records on hand because they were all on paper. Since this report has been put together and worked through, they've actually implemented a completely electronic system where it would make pulling this data a lot easier because we could just ask the major who is over the professional standards department to just kind of run a report and send it to us versus us having to sit in a room and collect all of that data by hand.
Oh my God, I could just imagine all of the copies of paperwork.
One thing I also wanted to bring to your attention about the numbers we saw in District 1. So I have those stats for us where we talk about the population. So Hamilton County's population of Black citizens is about 26.6%, whereas white folks take up about 67.6%. And it's interesting that District 1, while it does have the village of Lincoln Heights, and this is a historically Black community, it also embodies the village of Cleves. And one of the common threads between both of those communities is the amount of citizens who live below the poverty line in that area. So it's also important to talk about how force has tendencies to increase in lower socioeconomic statuses, and how that can be a contributing factor. So for the village of Cleves, that was a poverty rate of 17.2%. And for the village of Lincoln Heights, a kind of astonishing rate of 62.2%, while the national average is 11.9%.
Wow, that's a lot. That is a lot. But, and I would say for you being the authors of this report, how do you feel about conducting this report and going through it, and what are the next steps from that?
So I think I just want to start by saying, like, this is a thing that doesn't always happen. Police chiefs and police departments aren't always open to us coming in and opening their books and saying, here, collect all of our data. So I just want to first start by commending the sheriff and her team to really focus on this accountability and transparency, because we haven't been able to do this anywhere else. So I'm hoping that this report shows the rest of the departments in the county that, this is not a gotcha game. We really just want to see the community. It's not only just us, the community wants to know. Like 2020 happened, the uprising happened because a lot of people feel that policing feels like a secret. And so we want to be partners with the departments to show like, hey, community wants this information. How can we partner together? And it may not have to look the same way that our work with the sheriff's office did, but like community wants this. So how can we work together to give them the things that they want, but while also respecting the privacy issues that come with policing? And so I think next steps for us, for me anyways, we would love to do this again for the rest of the county and just kind of work with departments to see what their use of force cases looks like, and continue to collaborate with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, because there was a lot of great conversations that came from this report, to continue to collaborate with them as well as the community members affected by this report to see how we can better improve community relations.
I think it's also just important to just like reflect on our overall like mission for CSJ, because we serve as the community catalyst for police reform, and I think it's this type of data, these type of reports and opportunities to educate the community that allow us to do that. Without this partnership, we couldn't give recommendations or even on the base level inform the community exactly of how this data is affecting their day to day. Because at the end of the day, data does tell us a story, and that story is able to empower our policy recommendations.
Based on what you said and what I've read with the report, it looks like the report reflects the fact that the sheriff's office is going through a transformation, and that they are trying to be better at what they do, which is policing, than ever before. At least that's some of what I got from the report. Is that true? Or when you talk about transparency?
I agree. I definitely agree. I think Candra's point earlier about just the sheer decrease in cases we saw under the new leadership of the sheriff's office. I think that's a big reflection, but just also like they've been super inviting in these conversations. I think there's understanding on our side as well as the sheriff's office side that this is only the beginning of our collaborations, and that it's important for this type of union to continue for the overall effectiveness of their department, as well as the community's education about how it operates.
What has been the community reaction to your report since it's been released?
So we had a panel earlier this month, earlier in November, to share the report not only with the policing community that we have partnerships and relationships with, but also with the larger community. And it was well received. I think people I think we really hit home by explaining like this doesn't happen. And I want to keep reiterating because it really doesn't. Like the FBI just started collecting use of force nationally, use of force data in 2019. So when I say it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. So this is a very rare occasion. And I think by continuing to say that, community was aware that, wow, this is great information, but also I think we got a lot of questions, not only just we, but Major Schuler, who is the head of the Professional Standards Division department, was also on the panel, and she got a lot of good questions, I think, raised by community about how the investigation works, how they're defining use of force, and just other ways that they can partner with each other. I think this is a start. I think there's still a lot of mistrust in the community with policing, just given the decades and centuries of that mistrust that has been built. But I think this is definitely a step in the right direction to start and continue conversations to continue to build that trust.
What about on a national level of this type of report? You said it is not done. is it very rare that we see a report like this exist in anywhere in the country or with a police department?
So I think so. And I'm sure there's probably reports in the works, possibly. And I haven't actually, done a extensive search to see what types of use of force reports are out there. But if there are, they're very, very few and far in between, just because I think there's not only just the community mistrust, but also the policing, right? So there's a culture in policing that there's like an us versus you kind of situation. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, because police work is hard. I don't want to be a police officer, and I don't think that I could do that work. The things that they have to deal with and see every day takes a special type of person, right? And so I think there's this general, because they have to deal with a lot of sometimes the worst, and have to see and deal with sometimes the worst in humanity. It can create this divide between the community and policing. And so I think because there's some level of mistrust on both sides of that line. Police departments aren't always ready to open doors and open books and data to share, because also some of that is private. And so some of the data that we were collecting, we could not take out of the room because it dealt with people's privacy concerns and issues. And so obviously we want to respect that. So I think to answer the question, I don't think this is done a lot, but I'm hoping that these reports continue so that it can show that it can answer the question that community has, but also allows police officers and police departments and police chiefs to open that bridge, to start having these types of conversations with community, to really rebuild that community trust.
Okay. I would say that so basically your report can be used as a tool to start a conversation of how can we have a better relationship with you. We recognize that this is a form of your police work that does occur, but how can we uplift the community to think better about the police, and also have the police think better about the community where this does not happen as often? Because all you hear about are the extreme cases, which puts a bitter pill in everybody's mouth, like George Floyd and others, especially over the years in New York, Chicago, DC, what have you, even here in Cincinnati. What are your next steps? I mean, you've done this. I know you want to do it again. What happens if you can't do it again? How else are you going to use this as a tool to discover some interesting things about the police departments in Hamilton County?
For sure. I think that one of the most important things, it's like you said, recognizing that this is an opportunity for a conversation. I think it gave us, prior to this report, you might have an idea of how we might be able to contact them and get an idea of how many cases have occurred in a year or things like that, but we wouldn't have the intricacies of knowing which district and be able to identify which communities. And it gives us an idea of who do we need to reach out first, who's the most impacted. It's given us a lot of opportunities for potential collaborations and conversations with different community leaders in District 1, and the same for the other districts. And I also think, as we talk about like what this looks like, I think it increases the trust that the police officers have in us as we operate, because obviously the sheriff's office is going to be a leader amongst the police in our region. So having them as an ally in our work, and having our track record kind of proven that, we're not here to attack you, we're not here to be an adversary. We really do want to partner in both of our missions. It's part of their mission to increase transparency. They don't want to see useless use of force or unneeded use of force or excessive use of force. We want the same for our community members. So I think regardless of if maybe this exact report occurred again, the opportunities for collaborations with other departments, those doors are beginning to open even wider, as well as our potential to look at some of the other factors that contribute to policing within Hamilton County as a whole.
Well, thank you so very much for coming on our podcast and talking about this wonderful report. And I can't wait to hear what happens next and where you go from here.
It was a pleasure to speak with you both and just continue to talk about this work that we're doing.
Yes, it was great speaking to you all, and it's great to meet you.
Yes, thank you for coming on. Greatly appreciate it. Well, folks, that's it for today's show. I want to thank Andrea again for all the chocolate news. Always appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
And folks, you can find out more information about today's topics and past podcast episodes at www.cincinnatiherald.com, the Sesh newsletter, or on our social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Threads. And make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. Our podcast is on Apple, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Amazon, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. In addition, the Cincinnati Herald is now accepting applications for an advertising representative. So please call or text our publisher Walter White at 513-680-7076 for more information. I'm John Alexander Reese.
And I'm Andria Carter.
And have a good day.